Welcome to Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods. I am your host, Corey Nathan. This is where we get to speak with the brilliant and creative people who make the greatest coming attractions, movie posters, and digital campaigns of all time. This program is brought to you by 2496 Sound and Music Design, the best sound design and music elements in the business. We are also brought to you by the Golden Trailer Awards and by Soundstripe, the best royalty-free music for video, ads, and film. And today, I am so pleased to be joined by my friend Shea Jones, a terrific editor who's been over at XAV. I was looking at this, I'm like, 10 years? Are you serious? You're still like a kid, and you're like, you got a decade at one shop. That's a pretty good run, man. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, I was thinking about that just the other day, that just a couple months away, 10 years. That it does seem pretty wild. It's flown by for sure.
I mean, you still you're relatively young in like life. But you're like a grown ass adult, and like all that stuff. I don't mean to be like like big brother kind of uncle-ish sounding out of the gate here, but I didn't realize, because you're still very much on the rise. I guess that's why it struck me as like, wow, because you had a good run at PPC before that, if I remember correctly, and so a decade at one place, that means something's going really well for everybody involved, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. And yeah, when you bring that up, I remember when you and I first met when I was at PPC, and that was like pretty soon after I just gotten out here, and I don't know. Everything's just flown by. I'm lucky to be in the situation I'm in, and haven't had the opportunity to work for two really good companies. So
yeah. And you're around some folks who've been in the industry a good bit longer than you. So I don't think I'm reaching to say that you're still very much on the grow. You're still very much in your formative years, even though you've like hit your stride in a major way. Does that sound about right to you? Or
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's always something to learn in this industry, and I've had a lot of good opportunities, but I also feel like there are so many more finishes to be had, and so much more growth out there, and ways that I can learn to hone the craft even more. So yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah. Well, that's good, man, because I mean, a lot of the best creatives in this industry have not lost that hunger. Some of it is like that insecurity of like, oh shit, I'm looking at a blank timeline and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but still, like, as accomplished as some folks are, they still have that feeling, or just that competitive drive. Like, the best finish is my next one kind of a thing,
Right.
So, well, I want to go back a little bit, because I'd love for folks to learn a little bit more about your background. Went to UT Austin. You grew up in that area too, right?
I did. Yeah. I grew up in San Antonio, so just an hour away.
Okay. And were you aware of the rich history, like the filmmakers that were coming out of that area when you were growing up? Or, I mean, I was reading that you were like, you had other influences, like the whole Harry Potter thing was, but were you like Rodriguez and Linklater? Like, there were so many great filmmakers, not to mention all the stuff going on at South by. Like, were you aware of that as a kid?
Honestly, no. I had no clue. When people ask me about film school too, I always tell them that like I was like kind of like the worst film student. Like I didn't know anything. I didn't follow directors. All of the movies that would be, on the curriculum for some courses that you would take in film school are not ones that, like, I was always more into kind of like more of the like blockbuster sorts of movies than kind of the more artsy ones. And it wasn't even until like probably a year and a half before I went to UT that I even knew I wanted to do anything in film. So,
oh wow,
yeah, I thought I was going to do something math based growing up, and then I took a video tech class in high school, and just kind of fell in love with it, and started falling in love with trailers around the same time. I remember actually the trailer that got me into having an interest in trailers was the trailer for Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, Jen Horvath's cut.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I saw that when I was in high school, and I would just watch that over and over and over again. And I loved, like it would just give me goosebumps every time I watched it. I could talk about that trailer for so long, but so it wasn't until about a year before I went to UT that I was like, yeah, trailers is kind of what I want to do. And honestly, even when I was there, in film school, I didn't, there was a little bit of time that passed where I kind of got away from trailers for a little bit. I was like, is this really a path that I can follow? Is this a real job out there? And so, yeah, it wasn't until like right about just before when I left UT that I kind of got back into it.
Mm. So did you know that there was an industry, or was it just that you had developed an interest in the art form of trailers during those years, and you were just trying to figure out afterward? Like, how did that all come about?
Yeah, pretty much the whole time that I was at UT, I did not know about the trailer industry at all. And at that time, when I was like looking around online to figure stuff out, there weren't a lot of resources at that time specifically about trailers. And I my senior year, I did a program at the university where we basically final semester you come out to Los Angeles, you get an internship, and you're completing your coursework there, and with the goal being to transition into living in Los Angeles and making it in the entertainment industry. And so right before I came, I found this. Well, it was two things. One, I found this article online. I think it was called "Breaking into Trailers" or "Breaking into the Trailer Industry" by a guy named David Malky, who I I wrote to him after I read through it. I had so many questions, and he was kind enough to take my call and answer a bunch of questions that I had. And then the second resource I found was and I feel like a lot of people have this resource, but the directory from the Golden
Golden
Trailer
trailers,
Awards.
yeah. Monica and Evie, they're
Yeah.
awesome.
And so I knew I needed an internship when I was out here, and so I just kind of started going down the list and cold calling and seeing what I could find. So
That's great. It really is a great resource. I mean, it's not that different from when I first broke into the business, where I had to go partly by word of mouth, and a fellow that I'm back in touch with. He was actually he came on the show a few months ago, Robert Hyams. And by the way, Rob is one of the reasons that we've done this whole season of a tribute to Andy Keene. And that all came about because Benny was listening to that episode, and just things came together. But anyway, Robert was the first contact on this list that I made of people I thought might know something about the trailer industry. And he was literally like the 97th or 98th person on this list of 100 names. And everybody was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, the trailer, like, what are you talking about? And Rob was like, yeah, come out to lunch with me and I'll tell you all about it. And he gave me like all the names of the companies and names of different editors and producers. He like gave me the whole lay of the land and a little bit of the history of the business too. But about a year into it, I went to my first, it was called the Key Arts at the time, before they were Clio's. And I looked through the book. I'm like, oh, this. Okay. Now I'm going to start learning the real, like the whole roster thing, you know? But you got to be super, super resourceful. And for a kid like halfway across the country, you know, that doesn't even know the industry exists, I don't even know where you would start, you know?
absolutely, like Hollywood, when you don't live in California and haven't like had this access to Hollywood, it like it seems so far away, and you have no idea like what it looks like or how things work out here. So it was very much it was definitely a mystery to me when I was in college.
Did you have any family or friends? Was your sister already out here, or was she up north at that time?
No, actually, so my sister was in New Zealand at the
Oh,
time, actually. Yeah, she went to university in New Zealand, and I didn't really have any family out here. I knew that editing and the entertainment industry was where I wanted to be, and so this was kind of the main place to do it. I mean, New York as well, but
yeah.
it kind of felt like LA was where I needed to end up. So
And I'm trying to remember, your mom was a teacher?
she was in the military,
Oh, in the
actually.
military. Okay. I had
Yeah.
civil servant in my brain. But military. Okay. So you guys didn't travel around a lot with her job, did you?
No, she well, when I we traveled around a lot when I was much younger. But when we landed in San Antonio, um, she was on the Air Force base there for a number of years until she retired. And then when she retired, we just kind of we stuck to San Antonio.
So what did your mom, the military, you being a military, what did she think of you like trying to get into the entertainment industry?
She was so supportive and
Oh, that's
always so
great.
supportive. Yeah, because for most of my life leading up to high school, it felt like I was going to get into something math based, and then I guess it probably must have been my junior year of high school. I kind of dropped this bomb on her that I thought I wanted to do movie trailers instead. And no, I remember exactly what I told her. I was like, I want to cut movie trailers for Warner Brothers. Because like they had a lot of my favorite movies at the time were Warner Brothers things. But of
Yeah.
course, that's also a little bit of not entirely understanding how the industry works.
Right.
Because when you're doing it, you're not just cutting for one studio. You're, at a shop that's working with all these different studios. And so I told her that, and she was always so supportive. And I remember too that I actually when I was applying to colleges, I missed the deadline actually to apply to some of the film schools out here in California, and I was a little upset about it. Totally my fault, but I was bummed about it nonetheless. And she told me, it's fine, it's all going to work out. Like she just knew. She was like, you're going to be on the West Coast, so you're gonna make it out there. So she always had there was always a lot of support, and yeah, she had a lot of faith in it.
That's awesome. Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods is brought to you by 2496 Sound and Music. 2496 Sound and Music has been publishing music and sound design in Hollywood for over 2 decades. While most traditional libraries started with music first, 2496 started from the ground up, creating killer sound design elements for trailers and film campaigns. Then they started building a music catalog which matches the sound design catalog perfectly, creating a powerful blend of sound, music, and emotion. Their founder, Lenny Jones, who's a pal of mine, really good guy, he is a motion picture and television sound editor with credits on top shows including Ancient Aliens and Unsolved Mysteries. 2496's sound design can be heard on current trailer campaigns, including many of the summer's box office hits. 2496's composers and sound designers hail from all over the globe, giving their clients not just 24/7 service, but an international style that will appeal to a global audience. They excel at rapid customizations and creative revisions, minimizing delays in your creative process. If you're looking for the sound of the next for your next trailer campaign, check out 2496 Sound and Music at 2496sfx.com. That's the numbers 2496 and SFX like sound effects. That's 2496sfx.com. So how did you end up getting that the gig at PPC? That was just from the cold calls that you were making from the list?
Yeah, exactly. So I must have had, you know, 20, 30 no's from places that I called. And then finally I called up PPC, and Ben Copeland picks up the phone.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
He was getting the LA office started. That's right.
Exactly. And it was just really serendipitous timing that, because I must have called in around like October of 2011. And so I guess they had just opened that office, or were starting to. And I was like, hey man, I'm going to be out there in the spring. I'm looking for an internship. And he was kind of the only person that on all these calls just immediately was like, yeah, we could use an intern. And
That's
so
pretty cool.
yeah, that's pretty much how it happened.
So were you I'm trying to picture what you're like, were you sort of in awe? Because if I remember correctly, was that the office that was in the SAG building by like La
Yes.
Brea
Yep.
Tar Pit? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was
So
the
you're like
one.
kind of in the middle of a lot of action there, right?
Yeah, yeah. A lot going on there too. And I remember the first day that I walked in too. It's funny because like I I had seen I'd done my homework and gone and looked at so many of the websites for the trailer houses that I had called up before then. Yeah, I'd looked at some of the bigger ones. Trailer Park, Motion, a few others. And so just seeing like the amount of work that a lot of these shops did and a lot of the resources and PPC as well, because, they're very prolific over in London. And so had just kind of, all of this work on their website. I was kind of getting over there and being like, not having any idea really how big this company was or what I was walking into. And so I was really surprised the first day that I walked into the SAG building and into that office. And it was Ben, and it was two editors, and then it was me. And I was like, okay, so maybe this is what it's like. So
Yeah.
it was a very small operation when I started out, but it was great because it gave me opportunities.
Were you working on any of the stuff that they were doing in Europe, or just the stuff that Ben was getting here for domestically?
It was primarily the stuff that Ben was getting here domestically, though we did have multiple projects over the 4 years that I worked there that we'd kind of be able to ping them back and forth between London and here, get a good 16-hour workday out of it instead
Yeah.
of just 8, especially if we were up against deadlines. So.
And what was the circumstance when you made that transition over to XAV? Was it Chris that saw your reel, or how did you get that gig?
No, actually. So it was with Eric Netzley. So
Oh, right.
because he was over at PPC with me at the time, and I had been getting to a place where I was just hungry to cut on some bigger movies, some more domestic projects, and so yeah, I ended up coming over here with Eric and meeting Jeff. It was funny because Jeff gave me the job, but I never actually met Jeff before he hired me. So it was kind of cool how that worked out.
So, what was your impression of Jeff? Because Callan could be super, super warm and inviting, but he could also be fucking intimidating.
That's such a good way to describe him. And that's totally how I felt too. Like I came in, I definitely had some nerves because, I felt like, this was kind of my first opportunity in a shop that had, more than 8 people in
Yeah.
it. And I knew that there were opportunities to cut on some big stuff, and I felt like I had a lot to prove. So I was nervous coming in when I met him, but that kind of faded away pretty quickly.
Okay.
I mean, there were definitely times in the Bay too when I know he's coming to give me notes that I'd maybe be a little bit anxious about it. I remember pretty soon after I started, people would tell me that Jeff hated when people wore shorts in the office, and
That's so
worn
arbitrary.
I know, and I had worn. I think they told me this because it was on a day where I was wearing shorts,
Yeah.
and so they told me this, and I knew Jeff was coming in to give me notes at some point, and so I was just like,
Somebody give me a couch or something.
I was like looking for blankets around the office, and yeah, so there was definitely a little bit of intimidation there for sure, but some warmth too. Yeah, it's a great way to describe him.
And you got to spend, if my timeline is correct, you got to spend about a year when Chris was CD over there, Chris Park.
Yeah, exactly. So, which was the coolest thing in the world because when I got to X in January 2016, and Chris came, I think it was either April or May. So those first couple months when I was there, I had no idea he was coming. I don't know the details of when he was signed on or when he came over, but man, he was a guy that when I was at PPC, there was a time where like every trailer that was coming out that I was just in love with. I remember I would ask Ben every now and then, I'm like, do you know who cut this? Do you know who cut this? And he'd be like, yeah, that's a Chris Park special right there.
Yeah.
And so kind of like the mythos of Chris had been like built up in my mind. And a lot of his cuts, he cut in ways that like I aspired to cut, and just like, a lot of his cuts resonated with me. So it was a very, very welcome surprise when I learned that he was coming to X.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you look at some of the guys that he influenced, during his time at Trailer Park, and they really hit their stride, not just under him, but like continue to evolve beyond him. I think of Christian Capella Cologne. I think of Adam Rosenblatt. There's a whole bunch of other guys, and other guys that were already like in the peak of their career. A guy like Scotty Palmer. I know that they just influenced each other when Chris got to Trailer Park and spent some time over there. So it's not a surprise that having the benefit of may he rest in peace. Like, and I know that was a big blow to a lot of folks that thought of him as a dear friend, but also a really important influence. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so were you, when you first got to XAV? Did they hire you as a full editor, or where were you at in your development?
I was hired as junior editor, which I had actually when I was at PPC, I had been promoted from junior editor to editor. So when I went to X, and I was stepping back into junior editor, it was like um it never felt like a step backwards, honestly, like just in title, but I knew that the opportunities I was going to have, like, and I was confident too. I felt like I could come in and kind of prove myself, and so I was hired on as junior editor, but it was less than 6 months later that I was bumped up to editor.
Yeah, yeah. One other thing I'm really curious about is Eric Mickelson must be a very, very different kind of creative director than Chris was. But I bet, like, but they're both so special in their own ways. Eric is definitely a hands-on creative, but him having that time on the studio side,
Yeah.
it just gives a different perspective. How different is it working with was it working with Chris versus all your time working with Eric now?
Man, that's a good question. There were a lot of similarities in the way that both Eric and Chris produce. And in working with them, like with both of them, you could just feel like an abundance of support. Like anytime I'm working on a project with Eric, I I just feel like, anything I need, like if I'm stuck on something, if I need to run some ideas by him, like or anyone else on his team, like um the door is always open. There's always, and sometimes too, it seems like it doesn't even matter like what time of day it is. I get an idea at like 10 p.m. I want to ping him and figure it out. And I mean, same thing with Chris. Like, they're both producers that I wouldn't say implemented like tough love in bringing me up and working with them. The difference I think was because Eric did cut as well, but I feel like with Chris having so much of his career be like his prolific editing, a lot of it was like a little more technical in that sense. Um, but yeah, man, I feel like you know every producer is different. But I love cutting for both of them. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Do you see yourself at some point becoming a creative director or creative executive, or is that the direction you're going?
I do. I think I'd like that. I still love the chair, and I'm not ready to stop cutting anytime soon. But if that day comes, yeah, I'd be happy to kind of full time switch it over for sure.
Well,
I love,
you have some great examples over there. Both people that are like coming up in your colleagues. They're Lauren and Rachel are just fantastic. There's a bunch of them that you work with that are just really terrific, stellar, and all different in their own ways. But you've also had people that you've been able to look up to. So you've gotten a taste of a bunch of different backgrounds that lead to people becoming really accomplished creative director producers, and work with a lot of different ones. But like, man, I could definitely see the trick that I've seen is giving yourself time to make that transition, you know? and then being given enough support and mentorship to take those scary leaps where it almost feels like you're stepping off a cliff, you know?
Absolutely.
So I saw Seth Gavin do that with Chad when they first started AV Squad, about, I don't know, three or so years in, and then Chad's done it a few times, like with Buckman and Tommy. Like there are some really great examples of just some of the best creatives in our industry having made that transition, but with the help of other creative directors who made that same, evolution before
Hmm.
them. So your work, man, like, so one of the things I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but like how diverse genre wise that you can step into just about anything, man. Like, is that something that you take pride in, that you consciously try to pursue, or is it just kind of the way the projects have come your way?
Uh, Truthfully, kind of. I mean, I do take pride in it, but it really has just kind of been the way projects have fallen at times. I mean, I have genres and types of things to cut on that I prefer. I I I don't consider myself to be like a great horror editor, but at the same time, I've also had pretty good luck on a lot of the horror titles that I've worked on. So maybe I should just say I don't prefer it. So
um, so I was going to ask you, there is one, um, here it is. Boys, season 4. So
oh yeah.
how did you decide like how much violence to work into the piece? Well, is it just like that's the show and you're sort of deferring to what it is, or are you making conscious decisions to like shape the piece around certain shots and certain, I don't know how to describe it, but like artistry around the gore in a way?
Yeah, I feel like the show that is kind of what it is. It's the action and the gore and the snarkiness, but good versus evil, and just trying to find a way to get um all the action in there, but also having a lot of the fun in there too. So, Boys season 4 was one of the like rare opportunities that I've had to cut something that would fall more under like a red band than a green band sort of cut. And I think just because people at this point know that that's what this show is, I feel like we were able to get away with some visuals that were maybe a little more explicit than
Yeah. It's interesting that you put it that way because I notice you doing things, whether it's using the rhythm of the sound slash music that you're using, and not just this piece, but like in all of your pieces, or you're using the way you thread together different pieces of dialogue, or visuals in this case. But you can use I see that you were using certain things sometimes for shock value because that's what was in the movie or the show in this case, or sometimes it's just the artistic value of it. Sometimes it's for that comedy moment, right? But you were using what's in the show in order to create all of those different types of moments. Does that make sense? Am I hitting on the right? Am I onto something here?
um sorry, could you maybe reframe it a
Yeah,
different
yeah,
way?
yeah. So there's certain things that you do. Sometimes it's like the rhythm at which you thread together uh, dialogue, and it sets up for a comedic moment. So you're trying to do something. It's that comedic moment that you lead into, right? Bang, you hit the comedic moment. Sometimes there's something really beautiful, even in that. Like there was something I saw in The Summer I Turned Pretty, and you were doing something with the visuals where it was like a visual piece of poetry in a way because uh, different visuals, different shots sort of echoed the way rhymes and verses in a poem. I don't know if you were consciously doing it, but that's what I was seeing as the viewer. But different things, or sometimes it's the shock value, or sometimes it's elevating the tension. But I guess whether it's horror, comedy, romance, you're it feels to me like you're as the consumer, as the guy that's watching it, I'm like, oh, I just had a romantic moment. I just enjoyed a poem. It was a visual poem, but I just enjoyed a poem. Oh, that's really funny. Oh, I didn't see that coming. Like, so you're doing all these things, and sometimes you're using visuals. Sometimes you're using the sound. A lot of times dude, your fucking sound and your music, like, I could turn the shit off and just like turn the visuals off, and I could just like enjoy it. So
Thank you.
anyway, is that conscious, or is that just, are you more like a musician who plays by ear and it's just kind of going with the flow of what the piece is telling you to do?
Yeah. So starting out with the what you mentioned with like the rhythm, whether it's through dialogue or with the music or picture. Um, I'm very much a rhythm based cutter. I played instruments when I was younger, and to me, there's also there's like a mathematics
Yeah.
to trailers too, or well, at least with music. So having uh, you know, uh, measures and beats and sometimes I feel like I can actually be a little too beholden to those in ways like
Snake Eyes, dude. Snake Eyes. You had
yeah.
some kind of beat driving it, and it wasn't just one beat. It was like you turned it up in terms of speed, and then you turned it down in terms. But there was always like and you used different things to do it. Sometimes it was like it was a few punches in a row, right? Or the sound effect you use for punches. Sometimes it was an actual snare, like different visuals that lined up with a really snare kind of sound, but it was a definite beat that went through that whole piece. So
Totally. And that one too, with Snake Eyes specifically, I think one of the things that you're referring to is kind of like in the lead up to probably about like the midpoint in that trailer. It's pretty driving, and then you kind of drop out all of the percussion, and you just get those lyrics that are one doing a little bit of storytelling, but also with just kind of like the pads underneath it, trying to infuse a little bit of emotion into these cuts. And um, cut, I tend to cut like that. I think because a lot of cuts like that are the ones that impact me the most. Cuts where you can just like let lyrics start going for a little bit and let the lyrics do some of the storytelling, pull back on some of that dialogue, and then when you get those lines of dialogue in there, just finding like the perfect pockets to drop them in the music that just gives you those goosebumps. I
yeah,
mean, that's what got me with Two Towers when I first started falling in love
yeah.
with trailers. It's just seeing how masterfully Jen was able to do that, and you know so, so many of my favorite trailers are ones that have been able to achieve kind of a rhythmic identity throughout, but not one note, I guess.
Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods is brought to you by the Golden Trailer Awards. For folks who are just starting to get plugged in, the GTAs is an unconventional ceremony that honors excellence in feature film trailers, teasers, and movie marketing. Or as some folks like to think of it, it's the award ceremony for the short attention span. We all just celebrated the 25th Golden Trailer Awards. So would that be the Silver Golden Trailer Awards? Either way, it was a terrific show. Monica and Evie do such a wonderful job putting it together. Tons of fun, so much awesome work across the board. And mostly, it was just great to be together as a community. So keep an eye out for a number of exciting developments over the next year. Just make sure to stay plugged in at goldentrailer.com for a ton of exciting developments. That's goldentrailer.com. So how hard was it for you to keep as much quiet, as much silence as there was in Quiet Place 2? There was a lot of silence in that piece.
That one, man, yeah, because that,
Very little dialogue even. I mean, of course, it's a
yeah,
quiet place, but even for there was a lot of, and dude, you had me it, you had me because I was just like, I couldn't exhale like the whole thing, you know? I
It's
don't like those movies. Like I have enough tension in my life. Listen, but I'll watch the trailer for sure. And I I couldn't breathe, man. Like because I was waiting for a release of some sound for me to be able to breathe with it. So that must have been hard for you too, I would imagine, right?
it was it was it was challenging to cut to. Well, the thing that I remember most about that cut actually was because it locked. I think it locked like 3 or 4 days before the pandemic hit,
Mm,
and so then it went quiet for a while because they were planning on their schedule for dropping things just totally changed after
yeah.
that. So it disappeared for a while, and you start wondering. I'm like, oh, is this still going to come out at some
Yeah.
point? Like, is this going to give them an opportunity to kind of like reopen creative on it and whatnot? So that's what I remember most about that one. I mean, to your point about not having as many sounds in it, like I know that we did kind of like a breathing sound bed
Mm.
for that. But yeah, man, I got to be honest. Like, I feel like I hardly remember the process on
Oh
that
man.
one.
So talking about Quiet Place 2, talking about Snake Eyes, or even a little forward, something like Suicide Squad. Um, I would never guess you were the same guy that cut Starstruck. Remember that piece? It's
Wait,
this rom
Starstruck.
com. It was so different. It was this rom com, lots of dialogue. It was all about rhythm. Yeah, I forgot. It was right around the same time that the Quiet Place 2
Hmm.
came out. So yeah, it was just a very different. But if you look at your later work, like some of the stuff that you do with Amazon now, um, that it makes sense that that guy was already in there that could cut The Summer I Turned Pretty and those
Wait,
those
wait.
pieces.
Sorry, real quick. Are you saying that I cut a
I thought you
Starstruck
did.
trailer?
Am I
No,
wrong?
no. I never I never cut anything for
Just take credit
Starstruck.
for it, man. Just take
Yeah,
credit
yeah,
for it.
yeah. I should.
I'll show you where I got it. Like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe you were thanking one of your buddies at XAV. So, by the way, so if whoever's listening, and they know that they cut it, make sure that you hit me up. Give me plenty of shit, deservedly so. I'm easy to find, but I want to make sure on the next episode to give you props because I really enjoyed that, and maybe I assumed it was you because it made sense. It ties in really well with your later work. Like I said, the stuff that you're doing in recent years with Amazon.
Hmm.
So, but okay, the point still holds though. The guy who does A Quiet Place 2, Snake Eyes, Suicide Squad, is it the same guy that does The Summer I Turned Pretty? How do you like? How do you? Is it just? I don't know. You put on a different costume, you learn a different role. Like, is it method? Like method acting? You're a method trailer editor or something?
It's funny you bring that up because I remember when we started working on season 2 of the Summer I Turned Pretty, and of course I'm not the target audience for this show, and but I have to say that like working on that has kind of been one of the most rewarding projects of my career so far, and one that I've just loved working on, and it's for a number of things. It's one, a lot of the pieces that I've been able to cut for it, you can kind of just pick a Taylor Swift song and just let let her lyrics run rampant through it, which I
That's
think is
funny.
also speaking to the types of trailers that really resonate with me, where the music is like such a big identity. I'm so music first in almost everything that I cut, and so Summer I Turned Pretty really just kind of gave me it allowed me to do that because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like you're still telling you're still telling a story, and with Summer I Turned Pretty you can use the music as this vehicle to do it more so than the dialogue, whereas with and actually, I guess with Snake Eyes and even to a degree, Suicide Squad, we're able to do that too. Like, uh, Snake Eyes, dropping out and in the middle, and I can't remember exactly what the lyrics were, but
Yeah.
basically something to the degree of uh, you know, it's been a long time coming. Like I've been running my whole life, something to that degree to kind of get some of this character arc for him. And I mean, even with Suicide Squad, which it's not necessarily music that's doing storytelling, but
Yeah.
when you can have a track like that grandson song that we were able to use in it, and you know, what is the lyric in it? I I do not mind the rain sometime. I think that's what it is. But and you
Yeah.
can be like a little Cisse with the things that obviously make sense, like the shots of them walking in the rain and everything like that. To a degree, like I can draw like very thin threads between them, I guess,
Yeah.
but
So
they feel related to me.
a few things. One is when you've been with the same show over the course of a couple seasons, how do you, first of all, how different is it cutting on a show where there's a ton of material versus, 2.5, 3 hours of material for a theatrical release? How different is that process?
Oh, it's so different. Yeah, just the difference of having to, even in the breakdown, like breaking down something that's 2 hours long versus 9, 10 hours of footage. And it's it's uh it's a blessing and a curse in ways. Like it's nice in that you have um just an embarrassment of riches, so much to pull from, so many great shots, so many lines of dialogue, having 4 times the amount of footage. But then also it's like, how do you choose?
Yeah.
Like how do you pick um what's going to go in there? And that was something that was really complicated, specifically with like um Daisy Jones and the Six,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Carnival Row, that I also did with Amazon. Was just, those were kind of some of the first like really longer multi-episode series that had like hour-long episodes that I was breaking down and figuring out for a while. And like that Daisy Jones cut, that was, I think, like the fourth trailer that I cut for it.
Mm.
And the first three, of course, didn't go anywhere. But at that point, I had been with the show enough. I you can definitely, the longer you're with it, you get more familiar with it. You see what's working, what's not working, and start to look for different ways to get into a cut, different ways to move through it. So and yeah, I feel like it's a lot easier when you're working with a feature to I don't know. I feel like it's a lot easier to make new discoveries later on in the process with longer series than perhaps with a.
So what I was also going to ask you about, because with a show that you've been with over the course of a couple seasons, like the Summer I Turned Pretty, um, is it hard to keep it fresh at a certain point? And if so, how do you keep it fresh?
Um, that hasn't been my experience,
Okay.
honestly. Just with we worked on season. So really, I feel like I've spent so much time on Summer I Turned Pretty, but really it's been just 2 seasons. And with this past season being kind of the final season of it, there are just so many uh there are just so many different storylines that you can kind of follow with it. And even though kind of like I guess the formula of it is the same, in that, you're getting a Taylor Swift song that speaks lyrically to what's going on in it. There's a lot of potential to just kind of hold back on dialogue, especially with the teasers. I think in totality, uh, yeah, the teaser for season 2 and the teaser for season 3, just very little dialogue in both of them, and so it feels like that kind of leaves you so many places that you can go when you get into the actual trailer. And because that a good portion of that trailer is going to be lyrics too.
Yeah.
I think yeah, I never felt like I was struggling to find different things that we could put into those cuts.
So a couple more things about this. I was really curious. You mentioned something about Daisy Jones and the Six, which, by the way, I was just a sucker for, those pieces. Um, you said we didn't need to license a single sound effect on that one. So first, can you explain for folks, whether it's to folks that are just starting in the industry or just relatives, back home or whatever, can you explain why that's so remarkable? And then if you would share the process of how a piece like that emerges.
I certainly can. But first, I want to cringe at that a little bit because I remember, when we locked this cut, I was so hyped on it. I mean, truthfully, this cut, um, I think it's probably my favorite thing that I've cut, and so I was super proud of it, and just because so much of that cut is the music, a lot of the sound design that was in it, uh, pretty much just came from like the stems of the music. But like in me saying like, oh yeah, we didn't have to license anything, in my head, I was like, oh yeah, like, we didn't have to use like we didn't have to use outside sound effects for this. In my mind, I think I equated it with like, um, oh, there was a skill to like not using it. Where a lot of the times you look at cuts that have a lot of sound design in it, and that is such like a skillful thing, is to be able to take so many different uh sounds that like just listening to them on their own, you wouldn't necessarily put them together, but there is an art to how, people build up these sequences. Whenever,
Yeah.
if you ever were to ever look at like a sequence of mine, outside of maybe Crawl, um, there's, I have very little sound design in my sequences. And, but like we have some other editors, I mean, in particular here at X, that like I look at their sequences and I'm just like in awe of how they kind of like build things up and get them to sound the way they do with like all of these tracks of sound design.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, I kind of got off on a little tangent there,
That's all right.
but yeah, so with Daisy Jones, that one kind of came together. There was the song that we used in it, Honeycomb, Look at Us Now is the name of it. We hadn't been able to cut with that on previous teasers and trailers, but that was the song that, in watching it, kind of stuck out to me. And it kind of feels like it's like the main song of the series. So finally, when time came to cut this new piece, and we were given the freedom to use that, um, Eric and LaShawn and all of us who were working on it, I think we knew that the lyrics kind of were going to play a big part in it, and so it was kind of easy to not overload it with
Yeah.
sound, I guess. And there are, of course, some studios that have blanket deals with libraries, and as an editor, like, I have my go-tos. I
Yeah.
have my my bins of sounds that over the years I've gotten very comfortable with using, and then suddenly when that's kind of the rug's pulled out and you can't use any of those sounds anymore, and you have to find songs that are under these, or sounds that are in these blanket deals to kind of make up for them. It can be challenging,
Yeah.
certainly.
Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods is brought to you by Soundstripe. So if you're an editor, a producer, a creative exec, a music supervisor, or even a podcaster like me, if you're a content creator of all stripes, if you will, and you're looking for the perfect library of music and sound effects, check out Soundstripe. With over 10,000 high-quality tracks, including music from Grammy-winning artists, Soundstripe makes music licensing hassle-free. Believe me, I've tried it. I've been on there. I've navigated around. It was really terrific. It was really easy to use. So with a simple subscription, you get unlimited access to a vast catalog, downloadable stems for creative flexibility, and AI song editing to customize tracks effortlessly. Plus, there's seamless integration with Premiere, which is what most of my editor friends are on. It means a smoother editing experience. If you're ready to level up your production game with properly licensed, high-quality music and sound effects, head over to soundstripe.com/trailergeeks and save 10% with code trailergeeks. That's soundstripe.com/trailergeeks and code trailergeeks. One other thing, I thought it was remarkable how much you've done, in this case with Amazon. This is more a professional question, but is that something that just happens naturally over time, or is it something where you really got to fight to win your first one, and then you're still fighting to win the second one, and then eventually they know that they can count on? Like, how does a relationship like that develop?
Yeah, I I think to a degree, like, I mean, every trailer is a fight. Even if it's internal, cutting against other people at your company that are of course, cutting against other agencies.
Zuck is savage. That dude is
Zuck,
savage.
man, that dude is savage. His cuts are so good. But also just kind of like, honestly, like a fight with yourself to a degree, because like, for I'm going to take another tangent before I come back and like fully answer
Okay.
that. But like, there were definitely times, early in my career that I was comparing my creative to the creative of like other editors in the business, and kind of seeing other shops as, well, for sure competitors, but enemies in a way, I guess. And it felt so good if you won over a shop that um gets a lot of these big finishes. Like, um it felt rewarding. But the longer I've kind of spent editing, the more I realized that like the real competition it's just against yourself,
Mm,
and about learning and figuring out how to make your cuts better. It's because I get inspired so much seeing like some of the amazing creative that comes out around the industry, and sometimes I'm like, man, that is brilliant. I don't know how they thought to do that. What are some things that, how can I look at these projects differently, and maybe not mimic exactly what they did, but how can I take some of the things that they're doing, and what are versions of that I can do here? Or what are like new things that I can do here? So, with the Amazon stuff, like, sometimes we get projects in that it seems like it's just us cutting on. Like, truthfully, sometimes I don't know if we're cutting against other agencies on it, but I still have this kind of like competitive drive of like, I need this to be better than the last thing that I cut.
mm,
It's to that point that you were saying earlier, like, my best finish is my next finish.
that's great.
And so with Amazon specifically, I think it was Carnival Row might have been the first thing that I cut for them, and then Daisy Jones soon after. And it is, you definitely build up, your relationships with them, and gaining trust with them, and showing what we're capable of. Um, but it's never a guaranteed thing.
Yeah.
Uh, when you're cutting on something new.
Yeah.
So
That Carnival Row piece, man, that had so much. That you're talking about, the music choice, like even before the song that you leaned on really heavily, was very obvious. There were kind of hints at it. It was like an appetizer of the motif of the song. And then it was like you leaned into the song really heavily. You just like really work. You let the song do a lot of work. But then there was also that moment, if I'm remembering it now the right way, where everything dissolved into silence at one moment. Do you remember the piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and so there's moments like that where it's like I'm getting uh not quite hypnotized, but definitely transfixed into the story and the heartbeat of the song. Like my heart is getting into it, and then it's disrupted, so it forces me to pay attention all over again. But it also creates that bit of tension before we go for another ride. Yeah. So there's so much that if there's a lot that if you guys want to look at some of this work, there's really a lot to appreciate and to glean. We've talked a lot about it, but I could do this for like another 3 hours. So I'm going to ask you more like big picture questions, industry oriented questions for a second. We have gone through a lot over the last few years. I mean, you mentioned, one of your first big pieces was just like disrupted a few days, later by freaking COVID. But it wasn't just COVID. It was like, it was literally this year where, some of our friends were hit by fires and a lot of us were out of our houses, and me included, were out of our houses for a while. In between that, we had a year with double strikes that disrupted everything that was just starting to come back. So I guess my question is, with all of that, how have you gotten through it? What are some of the things that you've done to be able to ride, whether it's the uncertainty or the ups and downs or all the different things that we've been through?
It's a great question. I honestly, like, through like COVID and the fires, I've felt really fortunate to just be in the situation that I've been at X, where we've had so much support through all of this. From moving to um, from a status quo where everyone was in the office every day and collaborating that into like having to find ways to adjust when working from home, and then even carrying that through to once the pandemic was over and having kind of more of um a hybrid work life. I've found a lot of solace in just being able to. I come into the office pretty much every day. I may take, maybe there's 3, 4 days out of, maybe there's 1 or 2 days a month that like I work from home, but I coming in and being able to, still see people around the office. And even if it's just like for getting out of your bay to socialize with someone for a little bit. I mean, you know, when you have a job that's pretty much spending 8 hours a day in front of a computer by yourself, it's nice to kind of have people that, you can see throughout the day and lean on. And, I feel like the support, at X has always been like really, really strong, especially, I was fortunate enough not to be in an area during the fires that was in the direct line. Um, but I was able to um I was able to get out of the city for a couple of days during that, and work remotely, and it wasn't an issue. And I just feel like we've kind of always had that support, and it's always kind of just felt like the people are first, and the work is secondary,
Mm.
which is the way it should be.
That's a really good point. I was hoping that you mentioned something about that because there are a lot of people at XAV that I'm really fond of and have a ton of respect for, and everybody that I know well enough to have had conversations about, what would you attribute to having spent a decade? Like, there's a lot of marriages that don't last a decade, let alone chapters of a career, and it's the people. It's feeling a real camaraderie and kinship with the people there. There's a genuineness too. Like a lot of the folks that I know pretty well, there's a genuineness to them. So there's definitely something to be said about building a team organically over the years that um, I guess good people attract other good people, like genuine good people. So,
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask you some fun questions. So you already talked about one of Jen's Horvath's Lord of the Rings pieces, but
Mhm.
would you say that's your favorite piece of entertainment advertising, or are there others that come to mind for you?
There are so many that come to mind for me. It's hard to choose what is in the top spot on any given day. I've probably got like 5 or 10 that could just interchangeably be up there.
Yeah.
Um, I've got a few, and I'll say this too, and this kind of comes back to earlier when I was in film school. I was kind of like not a great film student. I kind of feel that way in terms of I feel like whenever you ask questions like this, they're kind of like the textbook answers to like the trailers that a lot of people say social network and other trailers that when you look back really shaped where trailers have gone and where they're at today and have had such big impacts. And none of mine are really those, honestly. A lot of them are I mean, man, Chris Park's Dark Knight Rises piece is one that I just love it so much. That was one of the first ones that I brought up to Ben, and I was like, "Who cut this?" And that was one of the first Chris Park specials I was introduced to, and in that piece, man, just at a time when I feel like so many action and blockbuster trailers were uh, bombastic and kind of like in your face with the sound design, a lot of um, swish hits, a lot of accents. To see a cut for a movie like that was, one of the biggest movies in the world at the time, and to have everything just stripped back to just kind of that like eerie string that opens and then just goes into just this orchestral place that it's like it's not it's not so rhythm based like I feel like a lot of my cuts are, and just to see that and to like get the goosebumps from that. I mean, like the stripped back nature of that one, and then pairing that with the second you get to the point in that trailer where, Anne Hathaway says, "You don't owe these people anymore. You've given them everything." And then he responds with, "Not everything, not yet." Like, how can you not get hyped watching
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Um, Chris has a lot on the list for sure. Corey, I'm going to be honest with you. I've got a list here that's probably like 30 of like my favorite trailers. So I won't bog you down with all of them. But let's see, what are some other ones I've got on here? Um, there was an Iron Man 3 trailer that came out along then, and not Chris's actually. I believe Kim cut the one that started with like the helicopter opening. Love
Okay.
that piece so much. The Mad Mir- the Mad Max Fury Road Comic
Oh
Con
yeah.
piece. Um,
Was that the one Adam cut?
um, Truthfully, I'm not sure who cut that piece.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Finkelstein cut that one.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
surprise me.
Yeah. Again, if you know what we're talking about and you're listening and you know who cut it, please correct me if I'm wrong, and we'll be sure to give it props on the next episode and in the show notes.
Um, Rob Nelson cut a really amazing Kong Skull Island trailer. That was just the sound design in it and the syncopation of everything was um it just chef's kiss. And it's that I think is kind of uh doesn't totally fall in line with like a lot of the cuts that I gravitate towards a lot, but man, that one was just
That dude's
incredible.
another one who has some like kind of under the radar freaking virtuosity. Like some of his pieces, and if I remember correctly, he has like a different kind of background. Like he was working for WWE or something like that, or
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So he
I
has
think
just a
that's right.
different
Yeah.
background that fed into it, but he has some fucking brilliant stuff, man.
Oh man, I have to name this one off because uh this one often I think of as number one when people ask me favorite trailer, and that's the Wakanda Forever teaser.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Just and that's like when you talk about a piece that is just so lyrically driven, but like the visual storytelling on top of it is just like perfect, and just goosebumps that entire piece. And I mean, that's another one. There's just one line of dialogue for that entire thing, and it's
yeah,
not story related at all.
yeah.
That piece was just all feels, and I watch it frequently. It's a great
That's
one.
awesome. That's great. Um, well, I'm sure we could do this. Like, we could have made the whole episode just on like going through. That's actually it would be good to like have people back, and then when we start, we're going to share some video here. Coming up in upcoming seasons, and but so far we're only using short. But when we go to full video, it would be cool to come and go through trailers and like
Oh
talk
yeah,
through trailers as you know. So we're gonna dive into it. I'm gonna have to have you back once we start doing that, man. So,
absolutely.
all right.
Dude, I will talk trailer shop all day. I love seeing a cut come out and dissecting it and talking about all the things that I think are working well and what really captures me with them. So yeah, absolutely.
Good, good. Well, like I said, I could keep on doing this, but we don't want to keep you too long. You probably got to. I got to pretend I work for a living, but you actually do work for a living. So, do you have? So before we go and start to wrap it up, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I do. So I'm curious because what I something that I really love about this podcast is kind of it it uh it feels like a history lesson a lot of the time in things that I wasn't around for when I was starting out, and just like tidbits about the industry that I don't know. And so there's been a lot of retrospect on it. And so I'm curious for you, looking back, are there any moments in the industry or, advancements, whether it was, a new trend in trailers or a cut that came out, or even something that isn't specifically related to a cut or, a specific piece, where you realized in like real time that you were witnessing history, or like something changing in the industry, um, you know, in real time, realizing things were changing and it wouldn't be the same.
So sometimes that moment is very obvious. One of the moments that comes to mind is pretty early in my career. Skip Shashan he did a few pieces, but Gone in 60 Seconds was something where he just found new depths to draw from in terms of the tools that were available to artists slash editors. And he was just because Skip sort of led the way because he's able to think both um, imaginatively, creatively, but he also has the technical virtuosity to get more out of his instrument. That being in that case, it was the Avid, than others knew was even there, let alone to dare to like go there. So that if there was like a moment, and I think that others were aware of it. Um, there were other moments too when the it was more, I guess, stylistically or what could be sold. That's not a good way to put it, but like I guess it has to be sold to creative executives sometimes and even filmmakers. But like when audiences respond to something that the people who are in the industry don't realize could be sold. So, for example, um, you know, there was a lot of early evidence that Chad Miller was really going to break out in the early days of AV Squad, about 3 or 4 years into the AV Squad's development. His piece, I've talked about this before, I think, his piece, Vantage Point, um, that came before the first Fast and Furious. But Vantage Point got him if I understand it correctly, got him onto Fast and Furious. But Fast and Furious was um, where he was taking a set of experiences and a sensibility that others who were more in the chair or in the creative director positions or even in the creative executive positions, they weren't influenced by the same things that he was influenced by. So to create an entire piece that, again, I think I've shared this before, but, and Chad will give me shit if I'm getting any of it wrong. But where he heard the trailer before he ever saw the trailer in his imagination. And very much like I see in a lot of your work where there's a sound composition that drives it. Footsteps through a hall, revving engine, screeching tires that you could put together musically because his background is as a DJ. Chad Miller's is as a DJ. So he thinks in terms of composing and constructing sound stories, but that was at a time when there were a ton of films coming out. Right around that time, right after that time, I think, JJ Star Treks were coming out. Transformers was coming out. So that approach could be applied, whereas, the industry hadn't completely gotten away from the inner world,
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, there were definitely some moments. Now, sometimes that is driven by the advent of a piece of equipment like an Avid. Sometimes that's driven by someone who just doesn't know any better. Like, oh, I didn't know you couldn't do this. Sometimes it's a collection of people, like the people who were that came together to form the company that at the time was called Harley's House, and then later became Ignition, which Chris was a part of that crew.
Mhm.
Chris was a part of that crew. Doug Brandt was a part of that crew. Chad was an assistant from that crew. Even like music people and designer people were in that crew, but they all came from outside of the industry. And other than, I mean, Martin, who still owns Ignition, but he had completely shifted careers and was a brand new producer that hadn't worked anywhere at other trailer companies. So there was this crew of people that didn't know any better,
Yeah.
and Meisner was a part of that crew. Um, Chad Meisner, the guy who did Little Children, and Social Network. So they influenced the work and elevated what the work could be and where the work could go, because it was this in that sense, in that instance, it was a collection of people that were outsiders and didn't know you couldn't do it a certain way. So yeah, different things, different moments. I'm trying to think. And then other times it's by necessity, so it's not necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily see it in the work, but the idea that we can have people cutting literally all around the world right now. It's not to say that people didn't cut remote, but it was really
Mhm.
an extreme exception to the rule.
Yeah.
So circumstances forced us to figure out the security, which is necessary. These are $200 million pieces of property, intellectual property. You
Yeah.
need to be careful about that. But the technology and the security mechanisms didn't exist to be able to have this. So now we can draw upon a world of talent that I think in the coming years we're going to see some great influences. So yeah, nobody's ever asked me that. That's an interesting, but it's a really smart, thoughtful question, because it is the history of our industry. The beginning of the modern trailer industry, it was just about like, hey, we don't need to do it this way, and there are these cool filmmakers and movies that were picking up on, it was just a couple of filmmakers in the 60s that were like, we don't do trailers this way. Like Hitchcock, like, no, I'm going to do my own freaking trailer, my own
Yeah.
coming attraction. And then the filmmakers of the 70s that called for, Spielberg and Scorsese and those guys and Brian De Palma, like those guys coming up that almost required, the advent, the formation of a whole industry that could raise their game to where film was going in general. That's where you got Kaleidoscope, and you saw the first modern campaigns. So interesting question. Yeah, I hadn't quite thought about it in those terms. So
Yeah.
any
No,
other
that's awesome.
Any other
Yeah,
questions?
yeah.
Oh
I got
shit.
another one
Okay.
for you too.
Sorry.
um, I uh, in the industry, I feel like it's easy for editors to get a lot of attention on pieces. You know, they cut it. Their names are tied to it, but and maybe sometimes graphics artists or creative directors take like a little bit of a backseat in the notoriety of it. And so I am curious to know if there are any graphics artists or and creative directors out there that you think are just doing like really incredible work right now.
Yeah. So, um, I don't want to sound like I'm playing favorites right now, but what comes to mind is, again, I think in terms of the history of the business, and some of these guys are still kicking ass today. But one of the first pieces that I studied was the opening title sequence to Seven. So it
Mm.
wasn't a coming attraction; it was an opening title sequence. But that changed the the experience of entering into a movie. And that's a guy named Kyle Cooper. At the time, he was the creative director at Imaginary Forces. And they were just changing the way you could use design as a part of the entire experience. And Michael McIntyre, who started Motion, it was really a whole separate company from CMP at the time, and eventually it kind of became the bigger brand. But Michael's original concept was to take that level of creative thinking to entertainment advertising. So to do the level of creative design, motion graphics design, and bring it to, because McIntyre was Frank Yoki's motion graphics artist when Frank was running CMP West. So Michael thought, well, let's make this prominent. So him and Justin King Hall, Justin had come up as an editor, Michael came up as a designer, and that was really kind of the the X and the Y chromosome, if you will, for lack of a better description, but that kind of made all that happen, but you get guys like Garson Yu or Yark Vinslaus, the dude that did, do you remember the AI teaser? I got to have Michael Camp on just to talk about that freaking teaser, but where the boy is stepping out of the A and the I thing. So Yark has done some beautiful work. Yeah. So, I mean, there's still some really great stuff being done, but like, taking that level of thinking, that level of um, design and using it, it's almost like introducing, like, it's almost like we've had an orchestra that's just strings all these years, and now you introduce brass.
Yeah.
It's like there's a whole other world. Now, I do think that there are some shops that are really crushing it, especially like, listen, Gertu is so holistic in his thinking. Gertu Serios from Grandson, that you'll see that level of intelligent creative in everything that they produce. It's not just Gertu's place. I mean, Billy, a lot of the stuff that comes out of Billy's place too. On the digital side, I think Zealot has some of the most beautiful digital work. Um, you know, so yeah, I do think that there's some really, really. Oh, I mean, the guys at Aspect. I mean, they can do like working man's stuff, because sometimes you just need to do the work with the graphics that you're using, but they can elevate it to, like, they can rebrand an entire freaking network. Like, talk about like some of the best opening title sequences of today. So the guys at that whole team at Aspect is fucking crushing it too. So, yeah, there's I'm sure I'm leaving people out, but like, as I kind of, in my mind, I'm scanning through the industry. I'm just thinking of, man, there is a lot of really, really creative intelligence. It's just oozing out of some of the pieces that you see. So
100%. I felt guilty even listing off the trailers that I did because of all the ones on my list that I can't give attention to that are incredible. So I
yeah,
feel you on that.
yeah, yeah. Well, these are great questions, man. I feel like I'm filibustering now. So thanks for indulging me with a couple of great questions. I'm not going to ask you if you have any more, because I'm sure you do. But like, we'll hang out. We'll get more sushi, and you'll ask me over sushi or whatever.
Yeah, that sounds good, man.
All
I
right.
appreciate it. I'm gonna check out those 7 credits in the AI teaser. I'm not familiar, so I'll check it out.
Sure thing. Now, I want to make sure, thank XAV. If folks wanted to check out all the work, not just you, but the whole team is doing over there, what's the easiest way to find all the great stuff that XAV is doing?
XAV.LA is our website where you can see all the cuts we've got there.
That's
that'll
great.
Be the way.
That's great. Hey, man, thanks for doing. I always enjoy hanging out with you. So,
same, man.
I really appreciate you doing this, buddy.
Absolutely. We'll have to get a card game going soon.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we definitely do, man. Like it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Absolutely.
Trailer industry poker players. I love it. That'll be our next podcast, by the way. We could do a whole freaking podcast on poker, trailer industry, poker. That's the next one.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
Yeah, anyway. All right. Well, thanks again. And thank you for listening, everyone who is checking us out. As always, please rate us, review us wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help us in the rankings. And it helps people discover these great artists like Shea and all the people that we've been interviewing and learn about the industry and the work. And it's really special. You could follow us on all the socials. I'm easy to find. I'm at Corey S. Nathan, at Corey, S as in Sam, Nathan, at Corey S. Nathan. Check out our awesome sponsors too, 2496 Sound and Music Design, the Golden Trailer Awards, and Soundstripe. Really grateful to all those folks for helping us keep the lights on. Thanks again for joining us. Now go do some inspired work.